If I were to do it all over again, would I get into trucking today in 2025 and 2026, as I have written down here? Because from the time I'm making this video, it is December, so we're pretty much in 2026. But I'm going to be answering the question, would I go trucking again? If I were to start it all over, I've been in trucking. I started out as a driver. I started with Millis Transfer about 7 years ago. And I drove company for about 5.5 years. I was an owner operator, solo owner operator for a year. Then I grew a fleet and drove while I had that fleet. And just recently, just a couple of months ago, I finally built the fleet up to a point where I can get out of the truck at least full time. And that took me about 7 years to get to this point. And but I was asked the question by a subscriber, would I go trucking again in 2025? And I think the best way to answer that is I would have to, again, go back in time to the beginning of my career, my situation at the time when I started in trucking. And then maybe at the end of the video, I'll answer, okay, would I do it right now in my current situation? But it's a great question, and it's going to be a great video for y'all who are looking at getting into this industry or you're already in it. This video, if you watch it through its entirety, I believe all the information I'm going to give you is going to help you, one, determine whether or not you should even pick this as a career choice. And then number two, if you're already in it or you've already decided, hey, I'm going to go into trucking, here's how I can make something of myself. Here's how I can go into trucking pretty much dead broke to, creating financial independence and financial freedom for yourself. And so I'm going to go back to the very beginning and talk about my career, and then kind of talk about, okay, here's how my career went over the last 7 years, and here's where I'm at now. Could you do something similar? Could you be successful with your trucking career? So I appreciate all of y'all for being here. Before I get started, and I am going to get right into it, like the video, sub to the channel. Again, stay tuned till the very end. Check out other videos too as well on my channel page if you're new. If you don't like me, dislike the video. Either way, though, engage with the YouTube algorithm and help grow the channel by, liking, subscribing, and staying tuned till the very end, like I said. So get into trucking in 2025, 2026. So like I said, I'm going to go back in time. Okay. Well, everybody's situation is different. When I got into trucking, 7 years ago, I was married, but my wife and I, we were young. I was about 24 years old, and we didn't have any kids. We didn't have plans to have any kids at the time. We were, waiting to do that. We were waiting pretty much to set up our careers. I had to get into something that, made a decent income and, basically get into a career where I could start out making good money and then, grow that income over time. So I chose trucking. My wife at the time was she was working like part-time and then going to school, so we were pretty much, when I got into trucking, setting our lives up. And I thought, man, because before I got into trucking, I was making, maybe 30 to 40,000 dollars a year, and I looked at what trucking was paying even in the first year, and it's like, man, you can make 60 to 70,000 dollars your first year. That was a big jump for me. I mean, that's an extra 30 to 40 grand a year. And then, I obviously did my research and found out, like, hey, as you get your experience, and if you with my starter company, Millis Transfer, you could become a trainer after 2 years. And I knew that, hey, if I become a trainer, I could, make well into the six figures actually, because you can team drive with your student, you get paid on all the miles, and I just kind of pretty much was like, man, I'm making 35, 40 grand a year, and I could go from making 70 to 100 plus $1,000 a year. That's just at the company I started out with. And then also too looked at, like, hey, if I specialize or like, specialize in a certain division, or I just simply get enough experience, I can go get much higher cents per mile and just a much higher pay rate and increase my income that way. This is all just as a company driver. And then, of course, I did research on, hey, I could buy my own truck. I could save up, buy my own truck, and make really good money, 150, $200,000 a year, and then I could grow my own business. And pretty much when I first was looking at trucking, I looked at all the avenues of how you make the money before I pulled the trigger on going to CDL school and getting my license. I wanted to look at, okay, yeah, I could start out making 60, 70 a year, and that sounded really good at the time. But I was looking for a career where I don't start at 60 and stay at 60. I wanted to go from 60 to 600,000 a year, and I wanted to become a millionaire. I wanted to get in and, of course, start at the bottom, get my experience, learn how to do the job, and go from 60 to 100. But then I had the goal of being an owner operator, growing a fleet, building a business. Not everybody, not everybody watching this has those goals. But what am I doing here? I'm going back in time and saying, hey, here's this 24-year-old Tyler who, was working a job where there really was no growth potential. There was no potential to really make more money and grow in that field I was in before. So I researched the trucking industry and figured out, yeah, if I just stay a truck driver, there's going to be a cap as to what I can make. But even if I stay company and I go from 60 to maybe making 110, 120,000 a year as a company guy, and I'm smart with my money, if I save, well, if I get out of debt, I save up 6 months of reserves in a savings account, a 6-month emergency fund, basically lay the financial foundation for myself and my family so that we get and stay out of debt. That lowers our expenses and have that emergency fund so that we don't go back into debt. And then above that, I can start investing and, buying stocks, saving up to, like I wanted to, buy my first truck and grow a fleet and eventually invest in real estate. These were all the things in my mind that I wanted to do. And to answer the question, would I go trucking again in 2025? Yeah. My younger self, like at 24 when I first started, say I was 24 now, and my wife and I were in the same exact position that we were then. Okay. Yes, I would absolutely do it all over again because getting into trucking, again, what did it do? It pretty much doubled my income. I went from 30 to 40 to 70 to $80,000 my first year, and then I started after about a year and a half to 2 years. I started making $100,000 a year, and I made 6 figures a year. Most of my company driving time. And then I was able to save and invest in the stock market and really build up capital over about 5.5 years. And I cashed a little bit of that money out, bought my first truck, drove as an owner operator for a year, like I said, and eventually I just cashed out my savings and put it all into my own business. And now I own a fleet of 7 trucks, and I'm running a business now. I'm out of the truck now full time. Now, would I go back trucking again if I absolutely have to? Like when I say I'm done truck driving, I'm done doing it full time because I'm running 7 trucks. I've got employees. I've got a lot of back office things I have to handle. And, I don't really have the time. I mean, I can do it. I could still drive if I wanted to, but it's a lot harder to, it's just a much higher workload now with having this many people and trucks to manage and to be driving full time and handling, all the things I got to handle as the fleet owner. But moral of the story, if I didn't start in trucking at, 24, and do what I did for 7 years, I would not be at this point. So why would I go back in time and say, no, I wish I didn't do that? Because now I'm off the road. I'm running a business. I'm trying to grow a business. And, it's pretty much, it's blessed me. Trucking has blessed me tremendously. And I explained all that at the beginning about, here's what my goals were and here's what I wanted to do with it. Because if you're looking at getting into trucking, you got to have that. You got to have one, you got to do your research like I did. You got to know here's the opportunity to grow. Here's how you grow in this industry. That's in any field, by the way. There's certain ways to become successful in certain fields. And in trucking, I kind of went over a lot of that again at the beginning. But if I didn't begin with those goals and dreams and things I wanted to accomplish, then I wouldn't have been able to, one, lay out a plan to accomplishing those goals and dreams that I wanted to accomplish. And two, I would have probably never did it. Because if you just go into something without a plan or a vision for what you're trying to accomplish, if you just go into it blindly, like, yeah, I'm just going to get my CDL just so I can make more money. And that's it. I just want to make a little more money. I don't have any plans to, max out my 401k, Roth IRA, invest in the stock market, buy real estate, own a truck or own multiple trucks. If you don't think like that or about all of that, trucking, would I go trucking? Maybe I would go trucking, but I would stay in trucking. It's not a matter of going into it. It's a matter of getting in and doing something with it. That's what really matters. So if you've stayed tuned this far already, one, that's good because you have an attention span. Number two, it's good because you're getting to see and hear what it takes to having success, not just in trucking, but in any field. And most people never attain any real success in any industry, by the way. There's a top 10% in every industry, and there's a bottom 90% in every industry. Trucking is not the exception. It is not. And the people that excel in every industry, they do their research on that field, they create a plan, and they work the plan until they accomplish the goals they've set out to achieve. Okay, it's that simple. So 7 years later, here at the end of 2025, pretty much beginning of 2026, would I get into trucking again? If I were 24 in the same, situation I was in back when I started, absolutely I would, because it is a way. Number one, this is another comment I got on on my last video. Somebody said, "Man, you could get into you can live in the truck. You could get into trucking without any. You don't even need a high school diploma. You don't need a college degree. You don't need any sort of real schooling to get into trucking, and you can go from making 30 to 60 to 70. And again, the sky's the limit, like I said. And you can live in the truck. You could sacrifice for, especially if you're single or if it's just you and your spouse, you could sacrifice for like maybe 2 to 3 years and live in the truck, pay off all your debt, build that emergency fund like I talked about, and start setting up retirement accounts or saving up to buy your first truck or whatever. All the things I just talked about. If you're going to do that, then absolutely trucking is worth it 100%. Because what job do you know other than trucking where you can live in your truck and not have to pay rent? You know, eliminating that rent or mortgage costs every month. For a lot of you watching this who can do that, you would be able to rack up a lot of money. You would be able to really get ahead and set yourself up financially. Not saying to go do that forever, but maybe do that for 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years even, and really set yourself up. I'm going to end the video with the steps on how to get in and make this career worth your while. Okay. But for me, yes, I would go trucking again. If somebody, I may have to go back driving, sometimes, like I said, because, a driver can quit, or, maybe I add a truck and I can't find somebody to fill that truck right away, and I don't want that truck sitting for a month or two while I wait to find a driver. Just because I have a fleet doesn't mean that I'm off the road forever. I'll never drive a truck again. But what I'm saying is I'm not going to truck anymore as far as full time while I have this business, because, like I said, the workload is just too much. But again, if I were starting over today at 24, would I do it again? If I had, like I had when I first started, I had very little savings. Um, basically no money. I started at nothing. Would I get into trucking again? 24, either single or married, and we, don't have any kids and stuff like that? Absolutely. Absolutely, I would do that, because you can do a lot of the things like I just talked about earlier in this video. So, but you got to begin with the end in mind, guys. And I'm going to go through the steps on how to make it worth it in 2025 and 26. Okay. One, you gotta have that vision, the goals, the dreams. You gotta have that. What do you want to accomplish with trucking? Do you want to use this job to, again, build a huge nest egg for retirement, or retire early through investing in, index funds or stocks? Do you want to save up and buy real estate and grow a real estate portfolio? Do you want to start a business in this industry? What do you want to do? Because you will make good money, and you will make enough money to, get out of debt, have savings, if you're smart with your money and you don't blow it all. If you manage your money wisely, you can do all the things I talked about. But you are going to have to be wise with your money. But if you have to have those goals, what am I trying to accomplish? And then you got to go, okay, what am I going to do in the industry? What's my job going to be? Do I want to do flatbed? Do I want to do step deck? Do I want to do dry van, reefer, oversized load? What do I want to do? Okay, tanker, hazmat, doubles, triples. Do I want to be a local truck driver, a regional truck driver, dedicated, over the road? Figuring out your niche in trucking is, one, how you figure out how to make the money. Two, how you last in the industry, you last with the job, because you're doing something you actually somewhat enjoy. Okay, so figure out exactly what you want to do in the job. Secondly, you need to decide early on, do I want to start a business in trucking? And how big do I want that business to be if I want to start a business in trucking? Is that just a one-man show, owner operator or lease operator? Or is that multiple trucks? Why do you need to know that? Because if you're saving up money and, you plan on starting a business, you need to know, okay, here's how much money I'm going to put into this business, and then I'm going to either invest outside of this business, or I'm putting it all into the business. You need to know that. Again, it's beginning with the end in mind, because a lot of you just want to buy one truck and use that one truck to fund retirement accounts, save for real estate, all the things I just talked about. And then there's others that want to, no, they want to go from one truck to 100, or, 1,000, and build a big company. You got to know that, because you got to know where you plan to put your money. So you get in, you specialize, and you got to know where you want to start your business in trucking. Do you want to, what division are you going to be an owner op or fleet owner in? If you're not going to do any of that, you're like, man, I have no interest in buying a truck. Okay, what are you going to put your money into? Okay, you've picked your division, you've picked, whether it's local, regional, flatbed, whatever, or, or local, regional, OTR, or whatever. You've picked that. Okay, but now you got to figure out, all right, I'm making good money. I'm going to get out of debt, have an emergency fund. That's all of you, whether you're owner op, company, fleet owner or not. At least do that for your personal situation. But above that, start investing in assets. If you don't want to be, and this is for the company guys, or solo owner operators, if you don't want to grow a fleet, okay, then okay, once you're out of debt and have an emergency fund, save up, pay cash for a truck, have a $30,000 emergency fund for that truck, and run that truck. And then you need to plan on maxing out, a SEP IRA or a solo 401k. And in my opinion, put that money in a low cost index fund, a total US stock market or S&P 500, or globally diversify, put your money into a total world stock market index fund, or maybe buy 60% US and 40% international. Put the majority, at least 80% of your savings in that retirement account or those retirement accounts into a low cost index fund. If you want to buy like single stocks or crypto and gold and silver, maybe make that about 20% of your portfolio. That's what my recommendation would be. And that's to the owner operators maxing out solo 401ks or SEP IRAs, and also max out like a Roth IRA. And then if can invest above that and even more money than just what the contribution limits are on those accounts, open up an individual brokerage account and invest in that. Moral of the story is put as much of your money as you can from your owner operator operation into retirement accounts and brokerage accounts so that you can max out your retirement and build a huge portfolio. And if you're a company driver, you want to open up a 401k, Roth IRA, and individual brokerage account. Try to max out your tax advantage accounts first, in my opinion, and then do the individual brokerage account. But moral of the story, if you pretty much, plan on either being company or owner operator, you got to have a plan for what you're going to do with the money you make from either one of those. Okay. If you just want to be company, you can immediately start doing the retirement accounts. If you want to be owner op, then you're going to have to save, once you're out of debt and have that emergency fund, then you're going to have to start saving to buy a truck and get that started. But that's why I said, if you want to start a business in trucking, you got to know, do you want to own multiple trucks? Because if you want to own multiple trucks, you're not going to really be able to do both, where you're maxing out, like a SEP IRA or Roth, Roth and all that. You're going to have to pour all that profit back into the business to buying and adding trucks. So again, you just have to have a plan for your money and, what you want to accomplish if you're going to be a business owner in trucking. And then if you're a fleet owner, you got to do what I just said. You can invest some, maybe I pay myself a salary from the business, but the majority of the money the business makes, my fleet makes, is going back into the business. That's because I plan on growing a business. Okay. I do invest my personal income into retirement accounts, low cost index funds, but the majority of what I make between my business and personal income that I don't spend on just living is going back into my business again. But that's my goal, that's my plan, is to build a fleet and grow a business. Okay, what am I doing? I'm just going through what you got to think about. you know um, I'm answering this question in a long-winded video this way because so many people, and I'm going to really end with this, so many people, they get into this because they think, you know, going from 40,000 a year to 60 to 70 to 80,000 a year is going to change their lives forever. And I understand when you're making 40 and you go from 40 to 60 to 80, that's a big bump. But at some point you're going to get used to making 70 or 80, and you got to have a plan to, one, increase your earned income in that industry, or two, use your money to increase your income elsewhere. And that's why I talk about, stocks and real estate and things like that. Okay. Outside of investing outside of your trucking job. If you don't do that, you're just going to really get in. If you don't do the things I just talked about, you're basically just going to get in and drive and you're going to get used to making that level of money and quit out because you have no plan for what you're trying to accomplish. So would I do it all over again to end the video? Absolutely, because I would go into it with the exact same mindset and plan I had, you know, starting out. And you know, the industry, yeah, I mean, some things have changed over the last 7 years since I first started. There has been a lot of changes and everything, but for the most part, trucking is trucking. It's the same job, you know, it's the same old thing as far as the day to day, really. You know, there's been a lot of, you know, booms and busts over the last 7 years, but that didn't really affect my plan and what I was trying to accomplish. You know, so to end, I like trucking, man. I would definitely go back and drive if I absolutely had to. Even now, in the position I'm in, if I absolutely have to go drive for a little bit, in the circumstances I alluded to earlier, I would. Um, you know, if I were starting it all over again at 24, same position, I would go drive again. But is that what you should do? If you know, I don't know. If you don't have a plan for your career and to get ahead financially, don't get into trucking. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your time because you're going to get in and again, you're going to quit in less than a year, or maybe you'll do it for 2 years and quit. But if you get in with a vision, a plan, and a goals of what you're trying to accomplish, and you're willing to work hard and you know put in the time to achieve those goals, absolutely trucking is worth it in 2025, 2026, and you know 2035. That's my video for today. God bless. Thank you for watching. Again, please like the video, sub to the channel, and check out more of my other videos. One of them's about to pop up now. But stay tuned for more content like this in the future. God bless and peace out.